Hi everybody, I'm Rook and welcome to the table for another Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Duel deck profile. Let's get right down to business with this one. This is a tier 2 deck that I want to share with you guys. We have to bring it to light. We have to make sure that you guys know that this is a very viable deck to use in the Speed Duel meta right now. This is the Gravekeeper Burn deck. Now, I did make a Gravekeeper Burn deck profile maybe a year ago when it was incomplete and missing some key components, but the release of the recent starter decks in May have certainly cemented this deck. I have been successful taking first place in a number of remote duel tournaments with this, and this is the deck that I'm currently using competitively on paper. Primarily focused around burning your opponent, not letting them attack, and nickel and diming them for 500 life points at a time until you win the game. This deck heavily utilizes the skill Twisted Personality that came out in the Twisted Nightmares starter deck. Twisted Personality is a Merrick skill where each time a player loses life points, you place one counter on this card, max 3. Once per turn during your main phase, you can use one of the following skills. You can remove 2 counters from this card, then discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand. Or you can remove 3 counters from this card, then destroy 1 face-up card your opponent controls. So first of all, some people might not realize is that this is each time a player loses life points. That includes yourself. It's much easier to rack up counters on this skill than you would think. And of course, the effects are fantastic. At 2 counters, you can ditch a card from your opponent's hand. You can snipe maybe the hand trap or something that they are going to use to combo off of. We've seen limited discard from hand effects in the Speed Duel format, and Twisted Personality pretty much blew it out of the water with a very viable option. So that's a great skill effect. And of course, if you're patient and get your skill all the way up to 3 counters, then you can straight up remove something face up. That could be a face up continuous trap or spell your opponent controls, or it could be a monster. So there's your out for getting a boss monster off the field. Twisted Personality is super viable, and it works really well with this deck because you are consistently looking for ways to nick damage off of your opponent. Let's go into the monsters. We have 3 Gravekeeper's Curse. Very straightforward. If this card is summoned, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. This is an 800 attack, 800 defense, 3-star monster that you're typically not going to use to attack with. This is a monster that you want to get out to primarily get counters on Twisted Personality and burn your opponent for 500. Now in the Speed Duel format, you only have 4,000 life points, so that adds up quickly. Also, Gravekeeper's Curse is used to combo with Wonder Wand, which will allow you to send both to the graveyard to draw 2 and get the necessary traps and additional cards you need in your hand to set up a defense against your opponent. So 3 Gravekeeper's Curse, and then 3 Gravekeeper's Recruiter. Gravekeeper's Recruiter is a great monster. Maybe you can set and kind of stall a little bit. If this card you control is sent to the graveyard, you add 1 Gravekeeper's monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. This is a 1200 attack monster, 1500 defense. The 1500 defense catches people off guard. It's not always easy to beat over. They really have to swing something heavy into it. And Gravekeeper's Recruiter going to the grave gives you a benefit to getting another Gravekeeper out. Maybe you need another curse just to seal the game. Or maybe to get something out like a Gravekeeper's Oracle, which is another win condition we run in this game. 3 Gravekeeper's Recruiter is absolutely ideal. This also combos very well with Wonder Wand, as Wonder Wand's a spell you can send them to the graveyard to draw 2, and you get Gravekeeper's Recruiter's Search off of that. So it's very good. 3 Gravekeeper's Recruiter, 1 Gravekeeper's Oracle. I run 1 Gravekeeper's Oracle. I think that everybody does. This is another win condition if the burn isn't working for you. Gravekeeper's Oracle is great because of the versatility. It has 3 effects when it comes onto the field that you can resolve in sequence depending on the number of Gravekeeper's monsters you tributed. Typically, you're going to just tribute 1. Maybe you have a RITE Spirit. You're going to get something like a Recruiter or a Curse back onto the field to tribute for the Oracle in your hand, and you can choose one of these 3 effects. You can either have the card gain attack equal to the levels of the monsters that tributed for it times 100. So if you attribute a Recruiter or a Curse, both 3-star monsters, Gravekeeper's Oracle is going to come out at 2300. Sometimes that is the ideal effect. It has another great effect where it can destroy all set monsters your opponent controls. That will be very good depending on what kind of deck you play against. And the third effect is probably the most prevalent effect that's going to be used a lot. All monsters your opponent currently controls lose 2000 attack and defense, and that is permanently. If your opponent has 3 monsters on their side of the field with, say, 1800 attack, and you bring out Oracle, minus 2000, now all those monsters are at 0 until they leave the field. It's a very good way to shift the board in your favor, and like I said, it is a win condition because you can certainly get Oracle out and then slam into a monster for 2000 attack. This monster is 2000 attack, 1500 defense, so it's searchable by Gravekeeper's Recruiter. So very versatile, 1 Gravekeeper's Oracle. And then the last monster I run is 1 Lava Golem, and I'm a sucker for Lava Golem. I gotta put it in this deck. Plays well to the burn theme. This one, you tribute 2 monsters your opponent controls. They get this Lava Golem. It's a 3000 attack monster. Oh no, what are you gonna do? Well, it burns your opponent for 1000 life points on their standby phase. Typically, you're comboing this with something like a Nightmare Wheel, which will lock Lava Golem from attacking, so you're essentially giving Lava Golem to your opponent and then not allowing them to attack with it. Additionally, the 1000 life point burn on their standby phase is very good for building up counters of Twisted Personality, and if you feel like Lava Golem is becoming too much of a threat, well hey, you can remove all 3 counters to get rid of it. So 1 Lava Golem, also a great way to get their big monsters off the field, any boss monsters or aggro rush that they're trying to do at you. Lava Golem shuts that down pretty effectively. Moving on to spells, we have 3 Wonder Wand. The Wonder Wand is a staple in most Gravekeeper's decks, certainly in this Twisted Personality Gravekeeper's Burn deck. You equip to a spellcaster monster, that's all the Gravekeepers. It gains 500 attack, not necessarily relevant, because if you control the equipped monster in this card, you can send both to the graveyard, draw 2 cards. So Wonder Wand is a great equip for something like Gravekeeper's Curse. Obviously you want to get Gravekeeper's Curse out in attack mode so that your opponent suffers the 500 life point loss, but all of a sudden it becomes a liability on the field as it's only 800 attack. That's where you can equip Wonder Wand to it and then send both the graveyard to draw 2, because most likely you are drawing into some defense, like a RITE Spirit to get Curse back in defense mode, or a Zoma or a Nightmare Wheel to save yourself when your opponent summons their monster. The other spell I run is 3 Twister. No Dust Tornado in this variant of the deck. There are a lot of decks that run Dust Tornado. I'm particularly finding success with 3 Twister. Twister is you pay 500 life points, then target 1 face-up spell trap card on the field and destroy that target. I'm finding success with this card because a lot of people are running Nightmare Wheel and Zoma the Spirit. Those are both face-up continuous traps that Twister can target. Additionally, you pay 500 life points to activate this spell, which is a counter on your Twisted Personality, so that works very well there. I'm not against running something like Dust Tornado or even Night Beam. I'd stay away from Night Beam right now, but Dust Tornado is a great alternative as well. And now moving on to traps. 3 RITE Spirit. RITE Spirit is a pretty good staple in the Gravekeeper's deck, any Gravekeeper's deck right now. Target a Gravekeeper's monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. This is very good for setting up the Oracle play, and additionally for getting Curse back out to burn your opponent for 500 more life points. If you target a Curse in the graveyard with RITE Spirit, Curse comes back out, you'll probably want to special summon that in defense mode, and then your opponent is burning for the 500 life points again. There you go. Maybe you do that on the end phase of your opponent's turn. Now your turn, you have Oracle in your hand. Not only did you get the 500 burn from the Curse again, but you get to tribute for Oracle and do whatever you want Oracle to do. That's very good with RITE Spirit. One thing to look out for when you're playing opponents is that they will most likely try and side a card like DD Crow against you. DD Crow is you drop it to the graveyard and you can banish a monster from your opponent's graveyard. Really good taking Curse out of your graveyard so you don't have a RITE Spirit target. Heaven forbid that's your only Gravekeeper target in the grave, and then all of a sudden RITE Spirit was worthless, so be careful about that. DD Crow, I also run that in the side deck. So 3 RITE Spirit, 3 Nightmare Wheel. Nightmare Wheel is something everyone's running right now. You activate this card by targeting a monster your opponent controls. It can't attack or change its battle position. When it leaves the field, destroy the card. Once per turn during your standby phase, you inflict 500 damage to your opponent. Another great card to kind of whittle them down 500 life points at a time and consistently getting counters on your Twisted Personality. Additionally, Nightmare Wheel is not an equip card, so it can equip to a card like Gearfried the Iron Knight, which Warriors is another prevalent deck in this meta right now, and Nightmare Wheel works well against. Additionally, Nightmare Wheel can be used to lock down the Lava Golem that you give your opponent if you so choose to run Lava Golem. And then last trap I run, and this brings the deck to a total of 23 cards, is 3 Zoma the Spirit. 3 Nightmare Wheel, 3 Zoma the Spirit, similar to a lot of decks that you're seeing right now, but hey, this is tier 2. We're going for the gold here. Zoma the Spirit is a trap that you activate and it becomes a monster in defense mode, 1800 attack, 500 defense monster. Still treated as a trap, so it can still be eliminated by something like Twister or Dust Tornado, even when it's in the monster zone. If Zoma the Spirit is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, your opponent will take life point damage equal to the attack that beat over Zoma the Spirit. Zoma essentially shuts down your opponent's boss monster. Say you're playing against Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, and you have a Zoma the Spirit in your trap zone, you activate it on Moth's attack. Your opponent's Moth now has to try and beat over the Zoma, but if they do beat over the Zoma, it's in defense mode, so you take no life point damage, but they are looking at taking 3,500 life points of damage, because that is the attack of Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth. Zoma the Spirit's defense is weak, so you have to time it right to avoid being beaten over by something with a lesser attack, like a Dakoichi, or even a Gravekeeper's Curse, where it's really not burning your opponent for much at all, but Zoma is very versatile, able to shut down attacks in the battle phase, and also very useful triggering on your opponent's end phase, so that on your turn you essentially just gained an 1800 attack monster that you can swing with. Alright, and that's it, plain and simple. That's the Twisted Personality Gravekeeper Burn deck. Like I said, this is tier 2 right now in the meta. This is summer of 2020. If If you're looking for side deck options, I currently run Sphere Karibo and Offerings to the Doom. The biggest problem deck that I face with this deck is the Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, whether it's Warrior Moth or Dark Moth. I find that the key is to be patient. You don't want to get a monster out and attack just so quickly for them to hit you with the Parasite Paranoid. Run those Sphere Karibos and Offerings to the Doom against something like Moth, as it's an easy out to when Moth comes out and it can save you from losing your life. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that this explains the deck for you guys. A lot of people are running similar variants to this, teching in a couple other good cards. I've seen Gravekeeper's Chief teched in this deck. I've seen people drop the Lava Golems. Sometimes it can be dead weight. Pretty much right down the middle of how the deck is built. And of course, you can build a straight burn deck if you choose to kind of stay away from the Gravekeepers. Obviously, a lot of these cards work well in a deck like that. If you guys like this, please feel free to hit the like button. Let me know how this deck is working for you guys. I find that it's working very well. It's one of the most fun decks to play right now. And I hope to catch you guys next time, as I have plenty more things coming out for you. I'll catch you guys later. See ya.